Hello, welcome back to Body Tuning Live. Today we're going to talk about the waist and the pelvis. Okay, as I described in the description below, the pelvis is the center of the body, and any kind of funky compensations in the foot or the neck is going to show up somewhere in the hips here. Okay, so we're going to spend some time doing some massage and trying to balance out the hips. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is get a feel for the muscles on the side of the hip. We're going to do this by taking the feet and trying to spread the ground apart. Okay, you'll see my knees kind of pop open, right? And I'm really aggressively trying to separate my feet on the ground. And here, if I put my hands on the sides of my hip and I make that movement, boom, I can feel the muscles get firm on the sides of my hip. Okay? These muscles are the gluteus medius muscles, and they're extremely important for balancing the pelvis from side to side. A lot of low back pain or that stubborn crooked pelvis actually comes from problems down here. Okay, so what we want to do is first wake up and balance the muscles on the side of the pelvis. So what we're going to do is we're going to lift one pelvis up like this, and we're going to step out to the side. Then we're going to pick this half up and step out to the side again. And you should start to feel the muscles working a little bit on the sides of the hip. Okay, lifting, scooping. Okay, we're just going to go back and forth a few times. And you can see from the side how I don't move very far sideways or forwards and backwards. It's very two-dimensional. Right, so I'm picking just up and side shifting. Up, side shifting. Up, side shifting. Up, side shifting. And we'll just groove on this for a little bit. Try to really feel a good squeeze on the side of the hip. Lifting the hip, pushing sideways. Lifting the hip, pushing sideways. Pushing sideways. Okay, that movement of pushing sideways is the same as if we practice separating the feet, spreading the floor apart. The same movement happens as we lift up, but now there's only one foot, so when I go to spread the foot, I'm going to push to the side. Good. Shake out the legs real quick. If you were getting that right, you should feel a good amount of aliveness coming into the sides of the hips. Okay, so we're going to move on to a little bit of a self-massage here. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to carve out the entire hip bone. Okay, if you put your hands on your waist, you'll notice that the shape of the hands actually reflects kind of the crest of the pelvis, right? Kind of rounds over the top like that, wraps to the front. Okay, we're just going to spend a second just rubbing along the crest of the pelvis, okay? Get a good feel for where the hip bones are. You'll notice that as you wrap around towards the lower back, it becomes a little bit harder to feel the edge of the pelvis, right? As we get into the meaty section of the muscles in the lower back. But here on the side and the front, it's a little bit easier to feel the actual crest of the pelvis. So we're just going to spend some time rubbing along that crest and try to develop a good sense in the mind about where one is. Even at this point, you may notice one's a little bit higher than the other, or perhaps twisted a little bit forward compared to the other. But for now, we're just rubbing along the surface of the crest, getting a feel for where it actually is inside of the body. Good. Now I'm going to switch to a fist-like position, my hands on the hips. Now we're just going to rub along the crest, okay? This can be quite sensitive at times because we are working around a bony area, but that connection to the pelvis is where we get all the obliques wrapping in, both sets of those, plus the transverse abdominis is grabbing in there a little bit. Okay, so a lot of these muscles are what cause us to have twisted distortions, or a dropped shoulder actually comes from tightness around the waist. And so as we just kind of smash and unglue the entire rim of the pelvis, especially around towards the back, you may start to feel something more sensitive. Good, just getting good aggressive circles. Okay, let's switch back now, activating the sides of the hip with the side-stepping movement. Nice dramatic music for the hips. You are. Right, again, imagining we're going to push forward away, so I'm here at the side, stepping to the side. You could also imagine you're stepping over the bathtub, right? Getting over the bathtub wall. But more importantly than lifting the knee is to feel that the hip is coming up and then pushing to the side. Right? First we get the contraction here and pushing to the side. So the other concept we need to understand is that the sides of the hip and the sides of the lower back work as a pair. Right? If I contract here, I also contract here. And as I contract here, I also contract here. That's how we get that full shift of the pelvis. But what we want to do is focus all the work into both sides of the hips so that we relieve the lower back of any of that lifting and carrying that gets done when we walk. Right? So as we walk, the pelvis might move up and down a little bit, have some side-to-side movement, but we want that to come from the push from the sides of the hip, driving upwards from both sides, rather than trying to haul the pelvis up from the lower back or abdominal muscles. Okay, so again, focus feeling the side of the hip, side stepping. Boom. Okay, we've got a clear sensation of the muscles, so we're going to advance this exercise a little bit. So standing up a little bit of like shoulder width, I'm going to separate the ground again, spreading the feet as if you were trying to slide the ground apart. You'll feel the hips turn on the side. And now what we're going to do is just practice bending the knees while maintaining that, and then straighten the knees while maintaining that. Okay? So it's just a really basic bending and lifting. Okay? The hard part is the internal direction. You must maintain a spreading of the ground even as the knees bend. If you're doing this well, you can really spread quite firmly and you'll get a lot of activation through the legs and hips. Okay? Dropping down, spreading the ground. All the time, moving the ground apart. Good. Take a quick second to loosen up the sacrum. Again, I use the fist-like position, and I'm just going to shift from side to side while I do circles basically around my butt area. The importance of shifting from side to side is that you'll notice this hip becomes slack when you lean away from it, so it's easier to get deeper into the tissue. And vice versa, as you stretch the hip open, it actually becomes more firm and harder to get in. And so as we just easily do circles on the slack side from side to side. The same will apply to the lateral muscles that we're trying to work on. Remember that any stiff tissue or tense muscle will not be able to contract as well because it's basically already contracted, which makes tight muscles weak. They're not actually weak, they're just stuck together. So if we take the circles more to the side of the hip, shifting from side to side, we can start to loosen up the muscles that we want to target today. Okay? And you want to get a good amount of downward pressure also, as if you're really trying to find the ball inside of the socket. So my hip crest is about up here. Right? Here's my actual waist, and here's the little trochanter, the ball thing that sticks out like on the side of my hip. Remember that the actual hip socket is somewhere in here. Right? So this is just the side of the hip, and everything in between here is just muscle. So that's where I'm going to put my fist and just try to get in there as much as I can. Right, really looking for the sore spots right along the bones, basically showing no mercy. And we can use the same trick to get the stubborn hip muscles in the front, the hip flexors, that you can feel. Oh, Justina, can you turn this music off? This is too much. I like the harpsichord, but this is too intense. Okay, so if we turn the hip inward and lift, you can feel this bulge in the front of the hip. Okay, so we can use the same techniques here as we flex forwards and away from it. This is actually going to slack the muscles there. So now you can get a little bit deeper into the front of the hip that way. And I use the kind of overhand fist, so the weight of my arm just falls into it like that. Okay, so we're just trying to carve out the entire femur, right? All the attachments that come to the femur. We want all this to get loosened up so that the sides of the hip can help do their job instead of the sides of the lower back. Okay, here we go. Now they're a little bit looser. Let's get back to side stepping. Good, feels easy. We know how to do this now. Okay, let's revisit spreading the ground, bending the knees. This is feeling quite a bit more comfortable now. Not as tense. Okay, so we're going to advance a little bit here. So remember, we're going to keep spreading the ground the entire time. You'll also notice that when you spread the ground, the knees pop out a little bit, but also the pelvis becomes very stable. If you continue to spread the ground, it becomes easy to move the upper body without the pelvis moving at all. And when we've talked about isolating rotation in the upper body, having some slight spread in the ground will help stabilize the pelvis. And the stability of the pelvis actually sends a nice signal up the spine saying, I know where I am, so I'm okay to relax. When we don't have stability in the legs and we're just flopping too much, then we need to rely on pressure in the core to stabilize us. And this can also get tiring. That's great for athletic movements where we need a lot of mobility, but safety for the spine. If we're just standing around, a slight spread into the ground will actually relieve the core and provide stability for the pelvis, which makes it quite a bit easier for us to be more relaxed and upright as the hips do the work for us. Okay, so to advance this, we're going to continue to spread the ground out, but now we're going to start to rotate just slightly from side to side. Remember that you're still spreading the ground apart. You're going to feel the activation start to change. As you twist the pelvis to face one way, you're now spreading in different angles, right? Always away from each other, activating the outside of the hip. But as you turn here, you're going to feel different parts of the hips turn on. Okay, so I'm bending one knee and turning slightly towards the straightened leg. But remember, all the time inside the body, I'm spreading the ground apart. And already this is starting to rack up quite a big burn on the outside of my hips. Okay, if you don't feel that by now, you need to try to spread the ground apart a little bit more firmly. Whew. Okay, let's shake that out real quick. Okay, and let's get back to massaging the waist here, okay? So you got the fists on the sides of the hips, and we're gonna roll back a little bit farther towards the top of the crest, okay? So if I've got my hand on the crest of my hips, it comes in about here. Right, so right around this top area where the lower back starts to get firm, I'm going to really try to get my fists in there and find the bony attachment to the pelvis in the back, just like we did on the sides and in the front. Remember that if it's particularly firm, you can always lean towards that side slightly to loosen the muscles. Okay, and today I'm in pretty good shape, so actually, even though I'm working on the bony areas, it doesn't feel so sensitive for me. Other mornings, perhaps tomorrow morning, I'll wake up and it might be. Right, that's why every day we need to spend just a few minutes trying to improve something for the body. Right, just clearing the hips, getting the waist. And by now, I'm probably starting to develop some redness. I don't think the color is very good on this camera, so you can't really see it so much. But I'm getting a good amount of friction around the waist, and that's starting to open up. Okay, so now let's spread the ground apart again. Boom, feel the hips get very stable. And from here, I'm going to take my fingers in a curling movement, and I'm just going to go into the pelvic bowl. Okay, so I'm coming here and sinking the fingers in and trying to clear out anything I can find in there. Okay, now again, I don't like to use too much finger strength when I work, so you can see how my elbows are actually doing most of the work. I basically just hold the shape with my hand and flap the elbows to get the hands to move, much like a can opener, right? So I'll kind of clasp in, okay? And now I'm using the arms and also manipulating my body to get this area to be soft so that I can dig into the front of the hips more. All right, if I bend over even more, you can really reach inside. And you want to just find whatever's uncomfortable. It's going to be different every day. I missed the Mozart piano concerto. The harpsichord was so intense. Oh, okay, I found something really hard in my right hip. Wow, okay. Okay, shake all this out. And a little bit of jumping here. All right, I'm going to start to open and close the legs to train the outside of the hips a little bit more. Just a few times. Good. Get some of our usual exercises, shake out the body. Okay, we're going to just, again, start to work on those lateral hip muscles. So we're going to add a little bit of strength to the program here. Okay, now we've gotten used to the side stepping, so we're going to do this funny coordination exercise where you're just going to lift one hip, right? So remember, this right hip is contracting the lift, and the foot is hovering, okay? And we're just going to shake this hip side to side, and you're going to stay as two-dimensional as possible, okay? And we're going to start to rack up speed. This is going to require a lot of stability for the standing leg. We're just going to go back and forth each leg a few times, okay? So let's make like maybe 20 flaps, okay? You just try to get good control. Try to see how my standing leg isn't budging at all, right? The knee stays in space. I can balance using my arms to help, right? But you don't see, this leg is very firm, right? I've got the hip lifted slightly, and I'm shaking the standing leg. Wow, really feeling the burn pick up on the outside of the hip. Okay, I'm going to go to the other side. So again, using the muscles on the outside of the hip, I'm going to push this half of the pelvis up. Push. And now with the leg in the air, just going to shake and focus on keeping the standing leg as still as possible. Oh, getting funny burns. Okay, switching back. Go back and forth a few times here. With switching. To avoid too much fatigue, we'll start to switch more frequently, okay? Maybe get 10 on each side. Remember to lift the hip first and then work from there. Lift the hip and work from there. Whew, good. We'll shake that out, let the knees go. Okay, now that we've developed some stability in the sides of the hips, let's turn that back on, spreading the ground apart, okay? Feel the stability come into the pelvis, nice and firm. The feet feel like they're gripping the ground, spreading open. We're going to start to stretch the sides of the torso now, leaning away and doing this rubbing on the side of the waist, okay? And into the lower back as well. And so as I spread the feet, get my pelvis stable, leaning away. Remember, spread the ground the entire time. Spreading the ground, don't forget. Good. Okay, so again, keep it going. Spread the ground here. We're going to start to develop our movements in this position. Okay, with the feet spreading, we've developed our rotation now. Okay, we're going to start to add the arms this time. Coming to middle, the arms opening and the feet spreading. We're going to drop the arms and twist one way slightly, but again, focus on keeping the feet spreading. You'll notice that the inner thighs and hips are probably more comfortable as you spread the ground. You may feel a lot of tension on the outside of the hip, but any kind of pinching sensation in the groin or the inner thigh muscles should actually feel a lot more comfortable as the work is done on the outside of the hip where we want it to be. Okay, so we're going to just focus on getting this pattern down while you continue to spread the ground. Okay, remember, we're bending one knee, turning, bending the other knee, straightening the knee. The lower body mechanics are very straightforward. You bend one knee and twist, straighten that knee and center. Bend one knee and twist, straighten to the center. Okay? If you continue to spread the ground, you will continue to improve the function of the hips. If you feel it's very difficult to feel the sides of the hips turn on, you can try opening the stance up much wider. So we stand like this. Now when you spread the ground, muscles have to work a lot harder to get that spread. And you're going to really feel them work hard as we dip from one bit. Okay, but I encourage you to stay in a more neutral stance where we might actually use this in real life, okay? So here we go. Let's rack up some reps here. Focus, spreading the ground. Don't worry about the arms too much. Spread the ground. Good. Another quick look at how the stability plays a big role in our functional movement is the bending over movement, okay? If we just take a casual bend over without thinking about it, no tension anywhere, you'll likely share the movement between the hip and the lower back. No problem. And there's nothing wrong with this. We do this all the time for exercise. But if you want to pick something heavier up, watch what happens to the same movement when you first spread the ground apart. And you're just going to maintain the spreading of the ground as you bend forward. You can still think about using your spine if you want, but you'll see it's pretty unnatural. If you continue to spread the ground apart, you'll find that the hips naturally shift backwards. You may even feel them click into place. Right? By spreading the ground, we provide that stability for the hips and pelvis, and this causes them to work, naturally in the right way. Right? When the pelvis has stability, the hips are ready to work. So practice just going down to the knees and up. And again, focus on keeping the feet spreading the ground apart. You'll find that the hips want to sink backwards, that it feels less natural to go forwards or try to arch the back or anything. Right? It'll feel very natural to just reach down while you spread the ground apart. You'll also feel a lot of work being done in the hips as opposed to the lower back. Wow, I'm going to be sore tomorrow already. Okay, so let's start to cool down and shake this stuff out. It was probably a good amount of work for one day. And let's get these easy crossovers, try to get the opposite movement going now. Yeah, holding. It's a good idea after doing this type of work to stretch also on the ground, to stretch the hips out on the ground. And you'll find that the side of the hip hopefully has wrapped up some tension in this process. Okay, so that would look a little bit like this. Down. Well, you're just rocking the knee around and across the body. No force, just moving the body where it feels comfortable to go. Perhaps dropping, stretching a little bit. Good, shaking the knees in and out, get some looseness in the muscles. Okay, let's wrap up with just a little bit more self-massage. Okay, no spreading the ground now. Keep the hips loose. And we'll just power wash out all of that tension. Shifting, using all of our techniques now. All right, sometimes lifting and dropping into the butt, into the sides of the hips. Leaning forward, get in front of the hips. Oh, here's something. Oh. Good. Shimmying out. Rounding the spine, shaking out any tension we've accumulated. Great. Okay, tomorrow's class, I'm going to be doing a class on how to use tools like this. These are called myofascial tools, and I won't necessarily be using this one. I'll bring a variety of tools that I have and also things that you have around the house. For example, the Asian soup spoons work pretty well. People have reported using the blunt end of a butter knife or something like that. Okay, and the way these tools work, they work just for scraping along the fascia and manipulating the body. You can see quite quickly how the circulation comes immediately to the surface that way. Okay, and so what I did this morning, I worked in the shower for my upper trapezius, and you can see what this turned into. It looks very bad, but it's not very painful at all. And the reality is I use these tools all the time because it's one of the fastest ways to get a ton of circulation and release the fascia in any given area. So depending on how comfortable you are working with tools, if you've never done it, now's the time. I would say look up myofascial tools, and you'll see lots of homemade remedies. So I'll bring a couple of tools. You'll need some kind of lubrication. I'll probably just use a generic massage cream here, but to be honest, I use just water when I'm in the shower because it makes a nice film and you can quickly cover different areas like that. So we'll probably go over the chest, the front of the shoulders, the forearms, hands, inside the hands, and all that good stuff to try to relieve tension around the neck and jaw and stuff. Okay, so that'll be a myofascial tool class tomorrow, and I'll see you all then, okay? Have a great day.